Hello and welcome back to CAD Tips and Tricks. I'm Jules here at Smart Design, a design engineer. Today we're going to be talking about the pattern feature in Creo. The pattern feature is an excellent tool to use when you have a feature that is going to be repetitive throughout your part or your assembly. It completely eliminates the need to rebuild that feature over and over again. So today we're going to be looking at a model of a brush where we have a brush head with a ton of bristles. And so instead of building out these bristles one by one, I'm basically going to build out one bristle and then show you how I pattern that to fill in the rest. So going into our skeleton model, I built out a quarter of the brush head. In the center of the brush, I built out a single bristle. And then at the top of that bristle, I add a round. I add this round here so that the rest of my features will also have that round. And then I only do that because I know that I want all my bristles to look the same. And so I take that geometry, I make a copy of that quilt, and then I publish out that quilt so that I can bring that into my part file. So this is just the setup for my bristle. All of the patterning is going to be done in my part file. Now coming into our part file, I copied the geometry for the quarter of our brush head and solidified it. I then bring in the single bristle by copying the geometry, and I pattern that geometry. So what I do is I use the pattern type fill because I want the bristles to take over the entire surface of my brush head. I also can change the geometry of the bristles by choosing a different grid pattern. So for example, I chose the diamond grid pattern, but I could also choose like a square grid pattern or a hexagon grid pattern, depending on what I want. So in this case, I like the diamond grid pattern, and I created a spacing in between my bristles of 1. Then I want to solidify my bristles. Now, this is where the pattern feature is very powerful. So I can solidify a single bristle. So I want to solidify the first bristle that I brought in with my copy geometry. That's the center bristle. I solidify it, and then I pattern that solidify. And patterning that solidify, it automatically creates a reference to the original pattern. So that way I don't have to go in and add all those settings like the grid pattern and the fill. It just automatically references that. So I reference the original pattern and hit OK. Next, I want to create rounds at the bottom of each of my bristles. I create the first round on the original geometry, so that center bristle, and then I pattern that round, and it automatically references patterns based on that first pattern that we created. The rest of the model is mirroring and merging the bodies together to create our full brush head. So now I'm going to go back to our skeleton model and just talk about the importance of copying your geometry. So the reason why I copied my bristle geometry and published that quilt out is that it allows me to go back and change my original feature, and then that will just automatically propagate in my pattern feature later on. So for example, if I wanted to change this round to a chamfer, I could do that here. The geometry is already copied, and then in my part file, I can regenerate, and all of those rounds at the top of the bristles will now be chamfers. So as you can see, the pattern feature is a very effective tool in creating repetitive geometry. In our next video, we're going to be talking about a different type of pattern, or a whole pattern. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you at the next one.